Hey guys, it's Rosie from Nerdist, and I'm here from my living room because it's 2020. And I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I am here with the cast and crew of Hannibal for an absolutely unprecedented reunion. And I'm just so incredibly happy to be here and so happy you could join us. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
So we're here on Zoom. And I guess the first thing that immediately comes to mind, and Bryan, I'll get you to kick us off. What's it like now the show's on Netflix and you've got all these fans again just back loving the show, sharing this show that they've been so passionate about for so many years with all these new viewers and old viewers rewatching?
It's interesting because my feed was full of the Hannibal community, as it were, so it never felt like it stopped. It never felt like there was any ebb. There was just flow, and that was lovely. So when it started getting all of this contact on Netflix, it was delightful, and I loved that Maz was already teasing fans that there was going to be a season 4. So I was like, yes, get into the zeitgeist. Let's have fun again.
Vance, could you talk a little bit about that? I mean, you're such obviously a passionate advocate. You loved the show. Before we got on, you were like, let's get this back together. Could you talk a little bit about what the fandom means to you and kind of having these people who love this project so much?
Yeah, I mean, in the aftermath, I did a few, or a little more than a few of the conventions, right? And there was also always a heavy participation from the Hannibals. And obviously the first question that came to mind was always, is there going to be a 4th season, and would you guys want to do it? And I always spoke for everyone, and I said yes. and it always grew and grew as if I started out saying it myself. 11th of March, we're going to start, but it was always the question, right? And the honesty of it was just that I felt like we all wanted to pick it up if there was a new home for it, and so now we have a new home for the old version, and we'll see where it takes us.
Loretta, for you as kind of a producer, and Martha to you too, I mean, you guys have been also really involved with the Hannibal community and kind of advocates for the show and the love that it has. What's it been like for you, and kind of where do you stand on it now?
I just think, I always say this, it has been the most remarkable thing because the fans never went away, like Bryan said. It is just a constant flow, and it's awesome. And it's the one thing that no matter what meeting I'm in, no matter what person I'm talking to, it comes up constantly, and it's always a gushing how much they love the show, and it's just has just a remarkable life of its own. It's awesome.
Well, no, and I agree. It's 5 years. It's much longer than that. It's almost going on 10 of when we germinated the project with Bryan and with NBC and Loretta, and adding on all the components that have stayed with us. And from the broadcast of the first episode, it's that core of viewers, the audience that hooked in right away. And I want to say they're probably the smartest of the audience because they loved all the nuances that were carefully woven in all throughout every single season, the performances, the class, the quality that just kind of snowballed into a global fandom, fortunately because of the exhibition distribution around the world. But the fact that it's the importance of this group of Hannibals that has stayed together, it's given them also something that grew, that you're all a community. We're a community, we're family. It's wonderful to see everybody here together again. And certainly we'd love to, spark it and get it going again, because it was magical. There was something very special. Not everything was easy, a lot of tough times, a lot of hard work on everyone's part. But,
it's interesting that you use spark it as a choice of words.
Spark.
Toronto and minus 27 below weather. That was not easy.
Come on, you were sitting in a wheelchair and you were on fire. That was.
Literally,
I was naked. You know what?
Good times.
You know what stopped season 4 for me is 7.5 hours of makeup.
I still have that picture.
That'll be the trade-off.
Actually, I pulled out my Eat the Rude t-shirts today because it feels very timeless and applicable to so much of what happens in the world constantly.
Yeah, I was something that I was kind of thinking as I'm a huge fan of the show. I think I've written about it extensively. I honestly think it's one of the best TV shows ever made, and it speaks to me on a lot of levels. But something when I was rewatching it that felt really profound, and I was kind of interested in getting some of your thoughts on, it feels like it really predated the trends of prestige TV as they are now, whether it's the kind of social commentary it speaks to, the representation, the visual look of the show. So kind of as all these prestige TV shows and this kind of different version of what we see as like high-end television has come about, how's it felt kind of, did you guys ever make that connection to Hannibal and kind of see it as this early adopter of a lot of the stuff that we see now? And maybe was it a bit ahead of its time? Bryan, I'll throw that to you and then kind of.
You know, I think we were all just trying to tell the best story at the time, and there wasn't kind of an agenda as to prestige television as much as it was about honoring the prose that the show is based on, and the very kind of purple bloated amazing text of Thomas Harris, and being able to try to adapt that into a cinematic language was a lot of fun, and it was super pretentious, and everybody was game for the pretension and found an emotional reality in that pretension in a way that elevated it beyond my expectations. So really it was just about how do we tell this story in the coolest way that we could imagine. And I say we because everybody on the screen and so many people who aren't on the screen really contributed so much to the overall style. There's no way any one person can take credit for this show, because everybody was rolling up their sleeves. Everybody was trying to find truth in the ridiculous dialogue that they were given, and they pulled it off. So that's something for me that is really lovely to see. And I can look at these faces and go, oh, I know when Caroline was like, I want to do this with the character, and Maz was doing the same thing, and Hugh and Kacey, and like it was all really just a wonderful troupe of folks who wanted to find truth in a really crazy story, and I'm just thrilled that it connected.
For me, there was a thing of like, you know, the notion of prestige television is that difference between, I think, what people perceive TV to be in cinema, right? And so I came out of doing films, I'd done a bit of television, but then I met with, you know, Bryan, and we just talked about movies. And the question really was, well, why can't you just make a movie and do all the things you would do in a movie, which is the mise en scene, is the dreams, the things that are psychological, as much as all of these things that generally TV doesn't have time for. And we just kept saying, well, why not? Why not have a man who's covered, who has black antlers on his head? Why not have a stag covered in feathers? And so to me, it was the first time that whenever I said, let's do this, everybody said, yes, let's. Nobody said, oh, I'm worried about this. And Bryan, particularly from the get-go, remember sitting with him in a coffee shop at the very, very beginning of this, just coming up with images, you know, before plot and story. So yeah, I don't know. Also, I brought Kacey Rohl's ear here.
It's delicious.
Looks tasty.
However,
I have headphones on for a reason.
So you can actually direct questions to Kacey's ear, and I'll pop it and Kacey can talk if you like.
I appreciate that, David. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not going to try and.
Is that you? I could not recognize you. Yeah.
Hello. It's good to see you again, Dad.
Now that you're holding a severed body part, I know it's you.
I mean, I'll direct a question to Kacey's ear, seeing as it's there. Kacey, because kind of what Bryan was speaking to, when did you find that moment that you connected with, that truth you wanted to bring to Abigail, who's obviously such a core part of the Hannibal kind of family, both literally and figuratively?
Yeah, gosh. I mean, I think it was showing up and being, I mean, Abigail to me, the beginning of her story anyway, is she's so held in the hands of these people that she doesn't know, and is has to sort of surrender to them guiding her, because everything she knows is gone. And me, you know, coming onto set with all of these incredible actors that I'd watched and thought were super cool and looked up to in many ways. That's what I connected. I was like, what the hell is this? I guess I'll just give in. Yeah, and I did end up feeling held, so thanks, guys.
Hugh, I was wondering if you could speak to that too, about when you kind of really found that connection with Will, and what made you want to tell the story.
I guess, I mean, going back to what Bryan said, I just wanted the opportunity to give a purple bloated performance. So rare that you have that chance. No, I don't
There are
know.
devices for that they can learn about on Gillian's new show, Sex Education.
You know, I felt like the first episode, so much of it, maybe this is always the case, was just trying to figure out, and no pun intended, like the DNA of the show, right? And particularly the visual DNA, that dream sequence, the kind of visual language. A lot of the fun of that for me, as well as kind of getting to know all the people on the screen here and working with them, was just figuring out, okay, this is what the show is going to be, and this is how it's going to break down. But a moment that jumps to mind was early on when we started filming the second episode, I think, which is when Will basically inadvertently starts therapy with Hannibal, and going to start. There were like 3 scenes in that episode, I think. And Bryan, you were on set and suggested that we do the first scene with Will up on the balcony, and then you kind of bring him down over the course of the episode. And I remember that kind of grounded, you know, that the way that was going to take us through the rest of the first season, really. And that grounded. Somebody playing the harmonica?
Yeah, Mads, what about you? When was the moment that you kind of felt that Hannibal was this character that you wanted to play and craft your own vision for and continue that story?
I don't know. I mean, I think that we all on the same page that as much as we love the books and what Anthony Hopkins did and other people before him, we wanted to separate ourselves from that and create our own monster, or angel, as I call it. But it's always a tricky thing, right? You don't want to just separate for the sake of separation. You want to be inspired by what they did and make it our own. I mean, I think that when I read the scripts, it was so obvious that we were doing something else. It was extremely graphic. It was extremely beautiful to read the scripts. And so we were just crossing our fingers that's what we were going to end up watching when we've done a couple of episodes. And when we saw the first episode together, I think there was a big relief, a sigh of relief that this was magical. It was lifted. We were being helped in any way possible to create something that was different from what we've seen before.
Caroline, something that really stands out to me about Alana is she has these 2 relationships with Hannibal and Will, but she's never defined with them. Could you kind of speak a bit to what spoke to you about the character and made you kind of interested in taking on her story?
Yeah, I guess, you know, she's a strong, talented, and well-respected woman in her field. And she's very composed and intelligent and all that, but she's very attracted to weirdos. She gets really close, but she never completely falls head over heels. So she's a bit protected. And I guess that's the contradiction that I like about her. She's very cerebral, but at the same time, she has this pull towards darkness and mystery. And she goes there, even though she knows it's wrong. Yeah, so I guess that's what I liked about her. I never really knew completely what was going on anyway while we were doing the show. So I always felt like I was, you know, grasping a little bit here and there about who she was. And then I guess I really understood who she was completely when I gave birth to a pig baby, or helped. Yeah, that one.
That was also one of my favorite things about working with Caroline, was just her coming up and saying that I feel like this character would evolve toward having a relationship with Margot Verger, and that there was something deeper and more interesting to explore in her bisexuality and her ability to navigate the weirdos, as it were. And I love whenever an actor takes ownership of a role and says, you know, I am the barometer, and this doesn't feel right, and this does feel right, because it teaches me more about the character.
Yeah, I think that relationship kind of means, and that reveal, it meant so much to fans, and it felt very organic and real. And Katie, I was kind of wondering how you felt about that ending for Margot and Alana as we saw it, and that coming together.
Well, I mean, it was so obvious to me from the beginning. Like when those two got together, I wasn't like, oh wow. I was like, oh yes, they're surrounded by these insane men, and they're both they both have this quiet confidence, even though Margot, like, it takes her a while to get there, but they are this calm center of the storm of maniacs. Mm-hmm. And to see them together gave me like a little peace in my heart for them, you know, like they will be okay. They're going to be fine. They final girled their way out of there. They are going to make it. Like, they'll be just fine. I always trusted in my heart Hannibal wouldn't kill Margot quite yet.
Not over yet.
Quite yet. But no, but
foolish thing to say.
I know. So I will eat
you could be in the oven next.
Exactly.
So many ways to die on this show.
But Caroline is so magnetic, and I think just those two characters are so perfectly meant to be, and I think it just made everybody feel warm and fuzzy inside when they finally got together and left.
Hettiene, Beverly is like another character. She was the character that I really connected to immediately. She doesn't want to coddle Will, and she doesn't make any space for Hannibal. She just kind of does her own thing. So could you speak a little bit to Beverly's kind of place in this world, this crazy world?
Yeah, Beverly was a very level-headed, pragmatic, science-based, loyal, brave chick. You know, that a lot of that is thanks to Bryan. He created and wrote this really great relationship between Beverly and Will, and who wouldn't love to have a Beverly in their life?
I don't know if you've seen, but there's a very popular fan suggestion, less of a theory, that you just come back as Beverly's twin sister, who we didn't know about, who is looking for justice. Is that something you would ever be interested in doing if it came up?
Wow. Yeah, why not? If I could have a fight scene.
Yeah, that's
fun.
I think, well, believe me, if we get a season 4 with all the Mind Palace bullshit of Will Graham's broken mind, everybody's coming back.
Can I have a twin? Just really
conjoined. You do. Will Graham does have one. We've never seen, parts that like where the conjoined is.
Okay.
Speaking of purple and bloated.
Gillian, I know that Bryan has often talked about Bedelia being the smartest person in the room, and that's something that comes across very...
You're lying to all of us. You're saying that to all.
I told that to all of them.
Not us.
Everyone is the smartest person in the room, but Gillian, when Bedelia is the smartest person in the room,
the drunkest.
He seems like the only person who Hannibal, maybe whatever equal is, kind of speaks to her in that way at some points. What does kind of Bedelia's place in all of this mean to you, and how was it to kind of play this character who is incredibly in the gray area of any two sides of good and evil or good and bad that we kind of know?
I haven't a clue. I have no idea. I mean, I would drop in, I would helicopter in and open my mouth and try and make sense of this ludicrous dialogue that just, I can't, in one way, that if I just twisted a little bit this way, a little bit that way. It might make a little bit of sense. And I'm not sure if I ever entirely understood what it was that I was actually saying. And I also think that because her trajectory changed so much, you know, from episode to episode in terms of, you know, that I think at one point I found a good way to play it, that it could go one way or the other depending on which eye you were looking at it with, like, you know. It's enough of a gray area that read it one way or another and still think that you knew what she was saying or what she meant by it, or, you know. And I honestly, that anybody bought my shit is just a miracle, because it was all, you know. But I remember reading something that Bryan said at one point. What was it that you said in some interview about that one of the funnest experiences you had was trying to make as much nonsense in a paragraph and trying to watch me figure out how to fucking make sense of it. And I thought, are you fucking kidding me? I'm glad I didn't take it any more seriously. Could you imagine me, like, you know, the entire plane ride, oh, fuck, what does this mean? But he said this. I would have gone mad.
I think you were right, Bryan, the smartest person in the room.
I have to say was that day playing David Bowie. Do you remember that day? Oh my God, in the back of that. Am I allowed to swear?
Too late now, Gillian.
Did it.
English, you can swear.
That ship, that whatever with the thing, and that 2 hours to shoot, and
that was a different show, Gillian. That was American Gods.
Oh God, that was American Gods. See what I
However, yeah. However,
David Bowie does need to make an appearance in season 4.
See it happening.
So are you saying it was exactly the same experience on American Gods? It's gone.
That's the quote.
It's gone. Goodbye, Gillian.
Remember, David, you've got an hour to shoot the entire scene, then Gillian gets back on the plane. Yeah, I remember that. On a Sunday, usually.
That was a good mic drop.
Yeah, that was perfect. Bye.
There were so many times where I didn't know how Gillian did it, because she would be leaving. She would be wrapping in Chicago at 4 a.m. and getting on an 8 a.m. meeting or plane and arriving in Toronto at 9 to get to the stage by 10 to get into makeup to be on stage filming by 11. And that level of needle threading was amazing. We were so lucky.
Production, no, it was. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Did you mute? I think
yeah, Gillian,
muted.
I think we didn't.
Muted.
No, I'm not. I'm not.
Oh, there we go.
Smartest person in the room. She's just muted.
Swearing.
After I mentioned American God.
Um,
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
No, I was just saying that it was I mean, the only way that made it work was production being able to fit it in, because my schedule was crazy, and you so could have easily, you know, killed her off, and spend a lot less money. And so I'm very grateful that you didn't. Martha,
as if we needed any more evidence that Gillian could shift seamlessly between shows.
One of my favorite kind of readings or conversations around Hannibal as it is now is kind of that it's this dark comedy, which I feel like that last kind of anecdote from Gillian leans into that slightly. And Scott, and I was wondering, like, you are kind of the most comedic, you are part of the most comedic pairing, obviously comedic. What was it like kind of bringing comedy to this really dark, essentially ostentatiously horror kind of show?
Well, I actually think the whole show was funny. So I don't really think of us as comic relief, because I think that the entire show was a dark comedy. there were lots of things that people were saying that I thought were very funny. So I didn't really think of it as being bringing comic relief. I was trying to be serious. When people started saying I was comic relief, I just went with it. They went, yeah, I meant it that way. And so, Aaron, can you speak to that?
No, but I think that early on, as like Hugh said, we were trying to find the sort of DNA of the show and how we fit in. And also, I think the show was evolving a lot, and we were isolated from some scenes, so it was a little bit like, what are they? Who are these guys? And I also remember trying very hard to be serious, but like so naturally go somewhere. And there was a scene, I think early, like maybe later in season 1, where Beverly's in court and it's just you and I and Lawrence. And that was when I sort of noticed that they had put us in I don't know if they'd done this before, but they sort of put us in like a comedy 2-shot.
Yeah, comedy framing. Absolutely.
Right. And so then I was like, oh, you're in a comedy 2-shot with Scott Thompson, maybe do something about it. So that was when it became overlapping dialogue and a lot of like trying to fill the frame a little bit with physical sort of let me talk kind of stuff, which was very real and organic, and because it's kind of how Scott and I are in real life with each other. And so that became a little bit of like the birth of what it wasn't too comic reliefy, but it was a different flavor that felt like something. That was our pig baby. Is when we figured that out.
We had an actual pig baby, but that's not a metaphorical pig baby.
You had an infamous scene in my kitchen. I remember when Vincenzo, you agreed on making a serious version and then a little more comedian version. And then when he said thanks, now let's do the serious one, and you said that was the one.
Was that the one where David yelled at us and David said, "What are you doing?"
There. He said, Vincenzo, I was not yelling at you. I don't yell at you. I would not yell at you. I'm not yelling at you now.
It was your ear. Your ear was yelling.
Janice, your food design has become such an absolutely essential part of the show and the fandom, and I was just wondering, kind of, could you speak a little bit to the origins of that and designing the food of Hannibal?
Oh, well, I think really in a nutshell, it was why not, basically. I will admit it's the first time I've been given so much freedom and indeed so much encouragement to be more insane than I actually am. And I think that was really the key, is that Bryan always wanted something more. And I thought, well, gee, this is pretty unusual. Usually people want less of me. I don't understand it. And that's really the sort of the richness and the multi-layeredness and the textured quality of it, and all the little details of everything, the key. And I think also early on I thought, I'm going to try to figure out, because of course it was Hannibal I was cooking for, so what piece of art exemplifies Hannibal in my mind, and try to tie all that in. And it really is that sort of 17th century Dutch master look, those still lives that are sort of teeming with insects and rotting, and that basically was the center of my focus.
I remember sometimes we wondered how people didn't twig to Hannibal earlier, because his food was always scattered with like dead chicken feet and bugs and the eyes of octopus. Nobody has put this together.
I remember times where Matt was like, "I'm just going to take the skull off the plate because it might be tipping things."
But I thought that was part of his audacity, was that he was in just bald-faced. He was just out there, not lying to anybody. Hannibal was never lying to anybody. He was just putting the truth out, and everybody just thought, "Oh, he's kidding." But
we also had a crime show, right? And at one point, everybody was running around looking for the killer. and on his table you had snakes and craniums and stuff, and it was like, can't we point the finger somewhere else?
But there's no way it could be this guy. He wouldn't have any time. He's out there killing half the wildlife.
Exactly. Oh, that was your
Yeah,
logic.
but nobody figured it out. The smartest people in the room never figured it out. I remember that party that the hors d'oeuvres in the party with the chicken feet and the claws sticking up, and that was actually. It wasn't an ad lib because I had the line to say they're going to call him Hannibal the Cannibal to Lawrence. But I remember just having a whole series of wild takes of just reacting to the food. And then you guys used it.
Yeah.
As hors d'oeuvres would go by, it's just Chilton making faces. And then that ended up in the show.
That delicious squab leg, that was a delicious hors d'oeuvre. It was squab leg. It may have looked horrible, but it was actually delicious.
Oh, it looked awful.
And it was an homage to your Living Dead guy logo. It was like that claw.
I know, I loved it.
Well, may I just add?
I remember the season one
did
finale.
not only look fantastic; it was so delicious.
It was.
It was absolutely stunning.
Even the collagettes, even the jellied anchovies.
No,
Admit it, that was delicious.
Wait, Mads, remember when we ate the blood pudding on set? We were eating chocolate that was made. We had two versions of it, and we could eat it with blood or we could eat it without. I don't know if you remember that, Janice, but it was
there's sanguinaccio.
Yeah, I remember that. We're like, we're gonna do it with the blood.
But it was always the best version. I mean, and I remember Lawrence and me. We deliberately fucked up a couple of scenes because there was foie gras going on, and we loved foie gras.
Those are always the best days on set if you were just hanging around. For those of us who didn't have to eat it on camera, there were always leftovers because Janice would make extra to make sure there was enough for however many takes, and we would all get to scoop up the excess, which was delightful.
I just remember eating 30 oysters in one sitting.
Oh my goodness, you ate so many oysters that one. Oh my goodness. You were like the oyster champion.
Was that in Florence?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wasn't that actually in Toronto?
You're muting. You're muting a little.
Your microphone might be on. Or,
it might be covered, I think, Gillian.
No, I just have nothing to say.
There you are.
Now we can hear you.
Yeah.
Well, now you can. No, I was just saying, wasn't that in Toronto for Florence?
It was in Toronto we shot it, and we had an oyster guy come in and chuck them for you fresh. He was so excited. He would have been.
Grace Jones shucks her own oysters, FYI.
Sounds like all the food that Janice prepared tasted as amazing as it looked. Do any of you kind of have a great memory of eating on set? It could be eating that food or eating kind of craft together, or just kind of, because the ritual.
I remember on the day that Caroline and I had our beautiful sex scene kaleidoscope time on satin sheets, which are really inconvenient for a sex scene. I think we fall off the bed left and right. But we were doing this, we're in our nipple daisies and our nude thongs. We're like, okay, we're not going to eat anything because, we're to be skinny and gorgeous on TV. And halfway through the day, production had generously brought around a hot dog truck, and we were like, fuck's sake. and we're like, we're gonna have it. We're like, fuck it, we're gonna have hot dogs. Like, we don't care how bloated we are at the end of this. We're having hot dogs. We're starving. And we sat in a room, huddled in the corner like Gollum, like inhaling these hot dogs. And then someone would come in and they don't go in that room. The girls are eating hot dogs. We were just like shoveling them into our faces so we wouldn't cry.
That's exactly the kind of story you hope when you ask that question.
I also remember eating hot dogs.
It was supposed to be sexy, and we just have crumbs all over us. It just wasn't.
I wonder if it couldn't have been the same day, but I have a hot dog story too, which was when we were easy, Scott.
Just don't hand it to me.
It was the
We're
kitchen
so tired of
sequence.
eating oysters. We had to have a hot dog. I mean, There's bisexuality, but you do shift to one side. You know what I mean? I'm just saying. The ship lifts a little more to one side. That's all I'm saying.
Hannibal never got a hot dog. And that's a good reason.
Never. Absolutely.
That's
never.
the whole arc of the show.
No, he lost his salad. He didn't eat his hot dog.
I never thought I'd say this, but I want to hear the hot dog story.
Yeah.
My hot dog story?
Yeah, come on, Kacey.
Oh yeah. So we were in the kitchen and Hannibal had just slashed my neck, and Hugh and I had been laying in a gigantic pool of blood for hours and had blood in places that you should not. No, it was bad. Anyway, and then we got up and almost fell over because the floor was very slippery with blood. And somehow we emerged from the kitchen and there was just this massive pile of hot dogs. Do you remember that? That was the best hot dog I've ever had in my life.
Totally.
I remember the beer that I had about half an hour after that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good
so the
call.
hot dog was good too. Yeah. That was a long night. That was maybe the longest night of some very, very long nights.
Was that the final of season 2?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
I do not remember
soggy.
food in those days. That was tough. But for me, the most beautiful part of our show, that final season thingy was just absolutely gorgeous to watch and heartbreaking. It was just it was rough and tough, but it was worth it.
That relationship is so core to the show and what people love about it. And kind of, I was wondering, Mas and Hugh, if you could kind of speak to how you see the connection between the two of them, because it speaks to people so much, and kind of what's your personal reading between that, because it's so complex.
Well, I think kind of like mutual recognition is a big part of it. It's like somebody, maybe two people who've been, if not lonely, but completely unique and felt that way for the whole of their lives, and then somebody comes along who, I mean, in Hannibal's case, it's conscious, right? I think he consciously sees in Will this thing, this rare thing, and Will perhaps unconsciously the same way. And the thing he's recognizing in Hannibal is, I suppose, the thing that his greatest secret, right, is the thing that he's most scared of in himself. And that's a very powerful thing. I always thought about it in a bit like somebody who, like, you're not only are you like a great chess player, but you're the only person who plays chess in the whole world, and nobody else has ever heard of chess. And then some other person walks into the room and they're carrying a chessboard, you know, and then just your whole world changes, right? So I think it's like that. What's that?
One night in Bangkok.
But with a lot of blood, you know.
One night in Bangkok. I think it's also I think you can relate to it when you're young and when you're our age and when you're older. There's always one person in the room that you want to see you. There's one person you really wish for could actually see you. And that person rarely puts his or her eyes on you. And I think that was the thing between them. They wanted to be seen from one specific person. And that's a very beautiful drama.
Yeah. I'm gonna put on my flower crown now, because I'm gonna read some of the fan questions, of which we got many, as I'm sure you can imagine.
Can we ask Raúl what it was like to be South Park's Kenny on Hannibal every season and meet some horrible demise after layers of makeup?
Please, I had lots of questions about all those deaths. So if you have any feeling, Raúl, about if you think there's a death he'll ever meet or why he survives, I would love to hear.
He'll never meet a death. I don't believe it. That Bryan just set out to torture me. Every season he'd find some new way. And honestly, the 7.5 hours in makeup were the things that finally finished me off. I have such a strong memory of the first time I walked on set with like the fake teeth and the ripped off face, and being in a bathtub all covered in this stuff that had taken over 7 hours to be in. And I think Guillermo was directing the episode at the time. And I had my arm resting on a kind of metal bar. And Guillermo asked a nurse who was working with us, a burn unit nurse, and he said, "Hey, I see that his arm is resting on the metal bar. Do you think that a man who's gone through this kind of burning would be okay with that? Would that cause him pain?" And the nurse said, "This man would be dead."
Immortal.
So I fully expect for Chilton to come back and get an anvil dropped on his head, or to be run over. Repeat. Yeah,
He's the Bugs
who
Bunny.
knows? You know, he put Chilton through hell. But
you're scaling it down. You're going from 7 hours to 5.5. I think
that'll be better. That'd be better.
Better every day.
Better every day. Actually, you sort of never knew. You never knew what sort of magnificent thing these guys were going to come up with in terms of what was going to be shown on set, or what the experience was going to be like, or how far we were going to go, or how dark it was going to, how deeply it would spin. I remember even walking around the set and thinking, this thing is so glorious, and most audiences will never see even 3/4 of what is being created here. The things that we didn't get to show, the things that never made it on screen, but just were bursting with ideas. And the greatest thing about, because I would dip in and out, I was coming back and forth from Law and Order, which was a completely surreal experience, to show up at the Hannibal set and be in this, what felt like an art museum gone mad, and at the same time a cast and crew that was just completely open to anything you wanted to throw at them. Like, if I had an idea for something, Bryan would say, let's try it. I remember coming back in the van with Caroline at one point, and Caroline saying, you need a cane. And we're like, yes, let's get a cane. And texting Bryan and say, we need a cane. He showed up with 6 canes the next day for Chilton. It's like, let's try these. And I said, let's try this. It didn't matter what you suggested. Everyone on set was like, let's go, let's do it. It's the most creative environment I think I've ever been in terms of filming. So who knows what kind of extraordinary death will come my way.
Well, that's actually a perfect lead into a question that we got from a Twitter user named Kyle Kerner, who said there were a handful of kind of lovely musical numbers in Pushing Daisies, and what kind of dream musical sequences would you have done or would potentially do if there was another season of Hannibal, and what songs would people like to sing? They suggest Chilton doing Being Alive from Company. So Bryan, I wonder if you could kind of spark us off about any potential musical options for Hannibal.
The first thing that comes to mind is Hannibal singing Feed Me from Little Shop. Hugh Dancy's Ellen Green.
Yeah.
Chilton's going to sing I'm the Worst Pie in London.
Let's get one thing straight. I'll dance it, but nobody wants to pay me for singing.
A man can dance.
I like that Hannibal dance sequence potentially on its way. So this is from a user whose name will probably give you a hint of what the question is going to be. Hanagram Trash asks, how do you think Hanagram / Hannibal and Will would have spent their quarantine time? And it must have been a very hard time for cannibals because of no hunting.
Well, you know exactly.
I don't know.
Where everybody is.
It's easy, isn't it? You know where everybody is. They're at home.
A lot more dead bodies.
Baking. It's perfect. The oven is already on.
Well, in Denmark, you were allowed to have a party of 10 as more
So
than enough.
they'd be in Denmark, is what he's saying. They'd be in Denmark. So convenient.
Denmark.
Always pulling it back to Viking country, I know.
Chaotic Hannibal has asked, what was your reaction when the show ended up on Netflix, and within the first week it was one of the trending shows, and it still is this week as well, and kind of what was that like to see how much people wanted to watch the show?
You're seeing personally my reaction to that news live. That's great.
I think that will be wonderful.
Contrary to Bryan, I'm the opposite of Bryan. To talk about a well-chosen word, I have no feed. So, I rely mostly upon Bryan to kind of, and you, I guess, to feed me this kind of information. It's great. That's really great.
Okay, this is a great username here, Daddy Mads. Are there any theories that you have seen on the internet about your characters or the show in general that you particularly kind of thought were cool and would like to come true? And I guess that can go to anyone, really.
You muted for a second. Any what?
Oh.
Sorry?
Have you seen any theories or ideas on the internet about your characters or the direction the show could go in general that you thought were quite cool and inventive or you would like to see?
I've seen a ton, right? But mostly I've seen some graphic novels
Fanfic.
I'm not sure I want to see it, but there's a small little part of me that is a little curious. I think you know what I'm hinting at. It's slightly erotic, but it's kind of interesting.
Well, that is definitely something that has spoken to a lot of fans. One of the questions that we got from Arielle Jacobs was, if Hannibal were to move to Netflix potentially for a new season, Bryan, would you be interested in exploring any of the canon, kind of exploring in canon the idea of any romance between Hannibal and Will? That's a question that we got a lot. And do you think that's something that fits for the characters?
Well, I think it's an interesting question. We certainly were driving toward a acknowledgement of that in the final season. I love this scene between Hugh and Gillian, filled with nonsense, but one point of clarity was that, is Hannibal in love with me? And from our very first meeting with Maz, Maz redefined the character immediately for me, because he was like, he's the devil. Like he is this thing that is both of the world and outside of the world. And so for me, the devil is pansexual. And I think Will Graham is a heterosexual character, but sexuality is fluid. And I think it would have to be a conversation where we would sit down and try to find what is the most authentic expression of their relationship now. And it would be a conversation with Maz and Hugh, and what felt true to the characters, because up until the point that I wrote, Is Hannibal in Love with Me?, I was really, I was aware of the fan community wanting a sexualization between the characters, and I was entertained by that greatly, and got a kick out of it, certainly. But I was also like trying to be true to Thomas Harris, and trying to be true to these characters, and trying to be true to Maz's declaration of Hannibal as the devil. So I think it's something that I'm definitely interested in, and I think it feels like we were on a trajectory, and we just have to find the most authentic path for that trajectory, as opposed to forcing something. And also, because of the nature of what would be happening in season 4 in terms of the grander manipulations that Hannibal has on Will Graham's mind, I don't think Hannibal would want to have sex with Will unless Will were of a right mind, and I don't think Will's going to be in his right mind in season 4. So like it's a big conversation and a lot to explore, and hopefully we'll get the opportunity to explore it.
One thing very important to say about this, a lot of questions come that way. The thing is that Hannibal loves beautiful things. He loves beautiful music, beautiful art, beautiful food, and beautiful people, physically or beautiful minds. So it's nothing to do with sexuality. It's just that he loves things that are beautiful.
And I think that's the root of him being the devil, is sort of like there is that appreciation of things that are beauty. And one of my favorite things about talking with the Hannibal community is that there is a wide variety of people who experience sex and sexuality in completely different ways, ranging from asexual to pansexual. And some of my favorite conversations have been with the asexual members of the Hannibal community, who feel a lot of stress on society to function as sexual beings when they don't feel it or don't feel safe in expressing themselves that way. And what was safe for them with Hannibal and Will was that their love was about love purely and not necessarily sexuality, which, just saying that to support everything that Maz is saying.
Katie, I know you've got to go. So
I do. Thank you guys so much. It was so nice
Take
to
care
see
of your dog.
everybody's faces and talk to everybody. Love you guys.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.
Jumping right off that, Bryan, because I think you put it so wonderfully. A user named Hannibal's Tit. It's an incredibly deep question from a wonderfully named user.
Now I'm thinking of Scaramanga's superfluous third nipple from Golden Gun.
One of the most meaningful aspects of the series is the treatment of female characters who are never reduced, ignored, vilified, or kind of fridged to further a male story arc. Can we expect new female faces if there is a season 4? And what about characters whose gender falls outside of the recognized binary ideal of gender?
I mean, I would love to see a lot more representation on the show, and I think that there's something interesting about the. I mean, we don't exactly have a stellar card in terms of that, because we did slice Beverly into little pieces, and you know, there was certainly aspects of violence against people that also included women. What we didn't do is include sexual violence, because that is too real.
You mean being in bed with the Wendigo?
But was it good?
It was weird.
Okay.
That's not what you told me.
Yeah, did I answer the question?
Yeah, that was great. Lorgsted asks, this is a question for you, Mars. In season 3, do you think Hannibal really did believe, as he told Bedelia, that he could only forgive Will by eating him? Or do you believe that if Will didn't try to kill him and decided to join him, Hannibal would have been able to forgive him?
I think Hannibal was exactly at the point I was talking about previously. If Will would see him and recognize it and admit it, I don't think he would have to eat him. But at that point, he was a little desperate. So the only out for him was to eat him. But if he really felt that he had been seen by Will, I think the story would have taken a different turn.
Janice, this is a question for you, but everyone else feel free to chip in because it's a great question. Demi Lee McAnally asks, if Hannibal had a chance to cook and eat the rest of the main cast of characters, what recipes do you think he would go for? And surely would Alana be accompanied by a beer?
Oh my goodness, so much fodder. Well, I think he'd do sort of, let's just say he'd do Cuban-based cuisine. But I think would touch on international, like, you know, doing around the world.
Picture
around the world, why not? Thing with each character.
And
Did you want me to be specific? I think
I mean, if you want to get specific,
a dying wish, like, how would you like to be? It's over. How would you like to be cooked?
I want to be a dumpling.
You are a dumpling.
A hot dog. Definitely a hot dog.
You would be a favorite if you. Willie Graham asks, and this is the question I think about often. As we all know, that in the end, Will and Hannibal may be chilling somewhere else, potentially Cuba. Who's looking after Will's dogs?
I mean, obviously Jimmy Price, right? you know, you go to the most responsible member of your community. Just look at that face.
I've also got his bar, all of his booze.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but Jimmy's drinking again in season 4. I just wanted to say that. Oh God.
Oh, good to know. Starling's Lamb asks, if Bedelia and Clarice were to exist in the same canon, what kind of relationship do you think there would potentially be between them? And do you think there could have been something similar to Will and Hannibal?
Well, I think that what's interesting is that we took so much from Clarice and wove it into Will Graham in a way that kind of hybridized those characters. So I think that there would be a similar kind of sparring and curiosity between them that we like. Some of my favorite stuff in season 3 was the kind of bitchiness between Will and Bedelia as they sort of sniped at each other as former kind of companions of the same person. So I do think that there's it'll be interesting to see what happens with the show moving forward, and whether there is ever to be a Silence of the Lambs miniseries with this cast.
And I guess kind of leading off of that, thank you all so much for joining us. This was really amazing. Bryan, I'll start with something less definitive. how does season 4 look to you right now, like visually? Like, what's your vision for it, and what can you kind of tease? You got to make your dream season.
It's very sort of sunny and sweaty as compared to the cold, harsh realities of Toronto. I think it would be fun to go sunny and sweaty and beachy and a whole new temperature to the cinema.
Except for Chilton, right? Chilton stays cold.
He's always going to be hot.
I stay in Toronto.
By yourself.
I'm slow roasted. I'm the only Cuban member of the cast, but I'm not allowed to enjoy the beach.
Hannibal, does he wear sandals?
No.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It is rude, and you know what happens when people do something.
Other funny user questions. And Bryan, I suppose the only question left to ask is, do you think we'll get a season 4 of Hannibal? Will it happen?
You know, I am very hopeful. You know, the great thing about the idea that I've shared with members of the cast in terms of where we're going is that if we are going to be meeting them and it takes 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, or what have you, and everybody's still interested in coming back, that's just how long they've been on the lam, as it were. And then the story picks up from that point and will adapt.
It'll be like grumpy old men with cannibalism.
That's the log line.
Speak for yourself.
Old men complain about the early bird special.
Nobody has any teeth.
What'd you say? And on a personal level, I guess for each of you, where do you see your characters? I mean, Scott, where do you think, apart from looking after Will Stocks, where do you see yourself when season 4 happens?
Oh, I think he has started drinking again. I actually meant that seriously. I think he's retired, but he might be brought back. I think he decided he had enough of this, and then he got really bored, and he'll be brought back. That's what I would think.
And Caroline, how about you? I know loads of people are wondering if Hannibal would ever really kind of take on that final threat. So what do you think for her and Margot?
Man, I have no idea. I'll be frank. I have no clue. I'll leave it to Bryan.
We got good stuff. We got good stuff for you.
What about Zeller? I want to know about Zeller.
Zeller is teaching at the FBI Academy.
What's that?
Zeller is teaching at the FBI Academy and has to beg Jimmy Price to come back.
He's probably
by seducing his twin.
Yeah, trouble with the student. It wouldn't surprise me either for Zeller.
Twins. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to do this and for making something that's so special to so many people, and for taking the time. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
So good to see everyone's face.
Bring us together.
Thanks, guys.
We're the ones saying thanks. Without you guys, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Everybody. Amen.
Thanks for making it happen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nerdist.
Bye, Hugh. Bye, Maz. Bye,
Great
everyone.
to see everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.